Jose Canseco will probably never make it to Cooperstown as a Hall of Famer, but he's an A's Hall of Famer, and maybe we should relook at his legacy.
You are Locked On A's, your daily Oakland A's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, A's fans. Welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about your Oakland A's all year long, and this, the final year in the Oakland Coliseum. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use code all or lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the game that happened on Saturday, and also talk about what could possibly happen on Sunday, which is really, really exciting if you're an A's fan, because it's one of the potential goals that we all had at the beginning of the year for something that could make a little bit of lemonade in this season full of lemons. But I didn't want to ignore what was a fun day at the Oakland Coliseum. And by the way, it was a great day because it was a beautiful day in the Bay Area. It was a good crowd. There was a good crowd at the stadium. Now, granted, I understand that it was the Bay Bridge series and that, you're going to get a lot of Giant fans coming over there. But, at this point, I like looking out and seeing there were 37,000 people at the Oakland Coliseum. I've been to A's games where it's basically me. And I've been to A's games where it's absolutely packed. And yeah, there's an energy to the place. It's fun when it's only a couple of people and we're all going bananas. But when it's fully packed, oh my God, there's so much energy in that place. And one of the reasons I was packed, obviously, was the series against the Giants. And it's also a day where they inducted several members into the A's Hall of Fame. Now, Terry Steinbach, multiple All-Star catcher who was the All-Star Game MVP in 1988. The late Dick Williams, who graduated from Pasadena High School, where I teach, who led multiple teams to the postseason. The late Bill King, one of the great voices in Oakland A's history. The late Eddie Joost, and Miguel Tejada, who was the American League MVP in 2002, who had multiple massive hits in the 20-game win streak and is basically unmentioned in the film Moneyball. The movie that made it look like the A's won 100-some-odd games in 2002 because Scott Hatteberg was taking walks, not because they had 3 Cy Young pitchers in the rotation and Miguel Tejada had an MVP caliber season. Okay, I digress. I've made that point before about Moneyball. The other person who was there, and the other person who was a big part of the celebration, was Jose Canseco. And I mentioned that I've been to many A's games where the place was packed. A lot of those were between 1988, 1989, and 1990. Arguably the greatest years in A's history. Yes, I know they won the World Series those 3 straight years in the 70s, but Finley basically was a specter over the whole team, and many times spoiled some of the fun of winning the championships with the Mike Andrews situation, the Catfish Hunter, all this other stuff. Everything was oiled correctly in the late 80s, early 90s with the A's. I know they lost to Los Angeles and Cincinnati, those 2 World Series. They were the model franchise. They had superstars. They developed stars. They made shrewd trades. They made smart free agent moves. They had La Russa, who was reviving players like Eckersley, like Dave Stewart, like Riccani Cut, like Dave Henderson. He was finding diamonds in the rough, like Mike Gallego and being able to utilize Tony Phillips and squeezing the last bits of stardom out of players like, Dave Parker. But also they had McGuire and Canseco. And yes, they also acquired for Ricky Henderson, the greatest offensive player in the history of the A's and arguably the greatest A's player of all time. But it's difficult for you to understand the electricity of Canseco and McGuire when they emerged, when they erupted in Oakland. And it was Canseco who was the star. Canseco was the sex symbol. Canseco was the proverbial straw that stirred the drink. It was Canseco who led the team. Now, we all know what happened and why he was so singular at the time, along with his teammate. I'm not going to ignore that. But Canseco brought a swagger and an intensity and a villain. People love to root against Canseco. He knew that. He knows that wrestling needs a heel and baseball needs someone to root against. And that's what Canseco did brilliantly. He would hit upper deck bombs, steal 40 bases, and have a ball bounce off his head. He was impossibly handsome and could still have egg on his face. And Canseco made the A's a fun, exciting, dynamic team to root for and root against. And the seats were filled. The A's had the biggest star in baseball, physically and figuratively. And with that, the place was packed. 33 jerseys were all over the place. And there was a sense whether you wanted him to swing and miss or you wanted him to ricochet a grand slam off the camera and straightaway center field, he was not going to disappoint. Now, we all know by his own admissions, he was taking steroids. And it wasn't exactly a hidden fact. In the Kirk Gibson game, the 1988 World Series Game 1, there is a segment on Canseco and steroid allegations. And lest we forget, Red Sox fans were chanting, steroids, steroids, in 1988. And he wrote the book on it, literally. Now, part of it came from jealousy that Canseco watched the golden boy, Mark McGuire, and the pride of Chicago and Sammy Sosa be called the saviors of baseball when they were going on their multiple home run tour in 1998. By the way, Canseco that year hit 46 home runs as a member of the Toronto Blue Jays. And he must have been thinking, wait a minute, these guys are doing the same thing I'm doing. And he came out and his career ended the same time as McGuire's, and Canseco with 462 total home runs and a phenomenal career over 17 years, wrote the book to say, hey, they're all taking roids, and so was I. And people are saying, oh, he's so full of it. And during the congressional hearings, people say, you got to consider the source. Everything he said turned out to be true. And the crackdown of steroids began with him writing that book. It would never have happened if he didn't write the book. We would still be in the middle of the steroid era with it being absolutely the Wild West if he didn't write that book. So if you like the steroid era, Canseco is your man. If you wanted it to go away, Canseco is also your man. Now, there are a lot of other off-the-field stuff involving Canseco that are really, really ugly. But his legacy on the field with the A's should be that of he was the biggest star at the biggest moment of the A's. Okay, maybe Ricky's probably the bigger star, or was the greatest player. But the electricity that Canseco brought, I was there. I witnessed it. I was there in 87. I was there in 88 and 89 and 90 watching the absolutely packed Oakland Coliseum, which was in the top 5 in attendance, by the way. The time that everyone yearns for is the times that Canseco was the star. So whether or not you liked him or not, do you know what? What he did for the A's and what he did for making the A's the cool team, and almost of the two teams in the Bay Area, it was going to be the Giants who skedaddled because the A's were drawing and the Giants stadium was falling apart. And it was the Canseco era A's that took the team to the next level. He'll never be in the Hall of Fame. I think he should go in as a pioneer, but what do I know? But I'm glad he's in the A's Hall of Fame. And when that's dragged to Las Vegas or Sacramento or wherever the hell they end up, the people there will probably only remember the punchline of Canseco and not realize, oh, the glorious impact. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you versus the numbers. All you do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get it on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. And you can now win 100 times your money on PrizePicks. With as few as 4 correct picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including Texas, California, right here in California. Also Georgia. Those are states. Download the PrizePick app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, run your game. Thanks for making Locked On A's your first listen today. For a second listen, enjoy more of me, your pal Sully at Locked On MLB, where I provide the national view with a little bit of my point of view to help get you ready for the Major League Baseball playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with me, your pal Sully. I've got it covered from every angle, every single day. I'm Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. All right, let's hear it for Osvaldo Bido, because he came up big in the game on Saturday. I still think it's ridiculous they didn't play on Friday, but what do I know? So he threw 6 innings, 1 hit, 2 walks, and struck out 6 batters along the way. The Giants, whose offense can sometimes look terrific and sometimes look grotesque, they got 2 hits. Mark Canha did not start the game. He singled for Mike Yastrzemski in the 7th and then got another single later. McRae got got a double and a single for the Giants, and that was it. That was it. And in so many ways, this was the absolute prototypical victory that the A's could have. Rooker was back from paternity leave. Glad to see him back. They scored 2 runs, which held up because Bido got pitched brilliantly through 6. Alexander got his 2 outs. Hallman bailed him out, and McFarland bailed out Hallman. Okay, so they got the shutout innings from there. They got 3 hits from Brown, including a run batted in. They got Andujar got a double. Butler got a double. Butler drove in a run. They got the 2 runs without a home run. They did not rely on the long ball. They played smart baseball, drove in runs when they needed them, and got they didn't just sit back and wait to get the big bomb. Butler got the sac fly, scoring Zeloff in the 5th, and then Brown got the RBI single, scoring Andujar in the 6th, and that was it. That was all they needed. And they also played error-free baseball. There were no errors. There were no wild pitches. They only, they didn't get the big home run, but they did everything else correctly. And with that, they got the victory. And then came the other interesting factor. It was not Miller pitching at the end, it was Ohtani's. And he came out and he struck out the first 2 batters. and walked around with a little bit of a peacock. All right. But then he walked a batter. He let up a hit and he walked a batter. And I thought, we all thought, oh no, they need to bring in Miller. But the thought was, hey, they used Miller for 2 innings the other day, and they're giving him the night off. But Canna got that single, as I mentioned. Bailey got the walk, and I just was thinking, oh God, this is they're going to blow it. They're going to blow it. And then Casey Schmidt strikes out. And with that, the A's got a fantastic win. They got a fantastic win in front of 37,000 fans. They got a fantastic win on a night where they were celebrating so many great A's, including Dick Williams and Miguel Tejada. And Miguel Tejada, by the way, had a great visit to the A's radio booth that I listened to, bringing up great memories of the 2002 team. And in front of 37,000, many whom were Giant fans, this gave A's fans one of the last chances they could have, at least in Oakland, to put a middle finger in Giant fans' faces. Birdsong he only let up 1 run, but he didn't get out of the 5th. And Bevins let up another run, and Hicks and Miller finished out the game. But this was a night for the A's, or an afternoon for the A's. But it got better. This is what I loved about today. It got better for the A's because they played a fabulous game, as I mentioned, did all the things that I mentioned. But down the 5 from the Bay Area all the way down to Orange County, the Atlanta Braves, who lost on Friday. If the Braves had won on Friday, the A's, who were idle, would have been tied with the Angels on this day. Well, it didn't happen. The Angels won. But today, the Braves were up 3 runs before the Angels even came to bat. And the final score was 11-3. 11-3. And it wasn't, do you know what? I watched part of the game. It didn't even feel that close. Harris got 3 big hits. Ozuna got 3 big hits. Darno got a big hit. And old friend Laureano hit a home run. Now, why am I fixating on this game? With the A's win and the Angels loss, the A's are now tied for 4th. They're technically not out of the cellar because the Angels and A's are tied for the cellar. But there are 39 games left, and the A's and the Angels are at break even. In other words, what needs to happen today? The Angels and A's are going to play 39 games. Will the A's play 1 game better than the Angels? If they can do that, then the A's will not be a last place team in their final year in Oakland. And oh yeah, just so you know, the Rangers, the defending world champion Rangers, lost, which means as of this recording, the A's are only 2.5 games out of 3rd place. I'm not saying we can get ahead of ourselves, but glorious things can happen. Hey, you've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 to get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need to do is have a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks for making Locked On A's your first listen today. For a second listen, enjoy more of me, your pal Sully at Locked On MLB, where I provide the national view with a little bit of my point of view to help get you ready for the Major League Baseball playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with me, your pal Sully. I've got it covered from every angle, every single day. I'm Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. All right, I got to wrap up this episode soon because there's a dog barking outside, and it's going to wake up my dog, Eleanor. So let's review what could happen on Sunday. This is what could happen. Sears is pitching for the A's tomorrow afternoon against Snell. Now, Snell is pitching like an ace again, but Sears is pretty darn good too. And if the A's can get to Snell and win this game, win both of them, then they hold steady. The Angels are playing with Charlie Morton up against Kochanovitz, who I don't know who that is. Watch him win the Cy Young Award someday. If Atlanta wins that game and the A's hold off the Giants, the A's will be in fourth place by themselves. They will officially be out of the cellar in mid-August, but it gets even better. Lopez is pitching against Molly. The Twins are on a rampage. They're only 2 games out of first place in the AL Central, and they have their eyes on the prize. If the Twins can defeat the Rangers, the A's could defeat the Giants, and Atlanta can defeat the Angels, the following things will happen. A's fans could sort of puff their chests out saying, we're not a last place team. We are not a last place team. And be only a game and a half out of third. And the scenarios that I just said are not out of the question. It's possible. Is it probable? Of course not. But it's possible. And if you told me at the beginning when the A's had that horrific May and June that we could realistically see the A's climb out of the cellar in the middle of August, I would have thought you were crazy. But alas, you'd be right. I'm looking over my dog right now. She's about to start barking at any moment. So I'm going to wrap up this show. So follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Giving Jose Canseco his due and seeing the A's possibly climbing out of the cellar that they currently share. This has been Locked On A's. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.